All right, team, it looks like we've hit quorum. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 11:05 a.m. And I'm going to start out with the in-kind sheet. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. All right, hearing none, we can proceed to the first agenda item, or rather the second. So the presentation on the Picture Rocks pilot route 414P is more of a discussion than anything else. But we wanted to allow time for this discussion so that we could go through the alternatives that were assessed by the team here at RTA and the conclusion that we came to in that time period. So as you all know, in October of last year, Route 414P, also known as the Picture Rocks pilot, started operations. This was due to some savings produced by shifting a fixed route in Marana to a general public dial-a-ride service. And what we saw was that there was a large outcry publicly for service in the Picture Rocks area. However, that was not followed up with ridership. What we saw is that ridership had a steady growth, but it ultimately maxed out at about 47 riders a day. And for context, that's pretty low. So per passenger, the average cost for someone riding route 421X is about $31.28. And the cost per passenger for a rider of route 414P is around $142 per passenger. So while the service was initially really heavily lauded, we have determined that even with substantial changes to the routing and making it more of a lifeline service as predicted in the long-range regional transportation plan as a 10-year project rather than a recent project, we found that it was unlikely that we would be able to eke out anything close to what we're currently operating as a cost per rider. And so that 40 passengers is the maximum. We're usually looking at a daily ridership of about 20 riders per day in both directions. So the RTA team is recommending that we do not proceed with making this a full-time route, and instead the pilot program will be cut in November, and we'll revisit the issue as the circumstances change around RTA Next and implementing the long-range regional transportation plan as provided. So I'll now take any questions, comments, or discussions about this agenda item. I see Steve Spade.
Hey, I'm just out of curiosity. Those are some pretty, there's a big discrepancy in those numbers between the two routes you gave. Tell me, what are I suspect the Picture route is a longer route. Can you share the route characteristics of the two you compared? And then is Picture Rock an aberration and everything else is performing at the level of the other route you cited? Or have you picked two different extremes? And then my other question is, understanding that this may be kind of a lifeline service, has there been any research on who's using it, why they're using it, and how taking this route away may impact people? And have you looked at any options to mitigate, if people are using that service, what impact are you going to have?
Right. So I'll start with your first question, the characteristics of the routes that I've described. So 414P runs mostly along Sandario north of Picture Rocks, and Twin Peaks east of Sandario to Tucson Premium Outlets. So it connects the communities of Picture Rocks, and it is actually a bit shorter, but it runs hourly than the compared to the 421X, which is an express service but runs every 90 minutes. So we're looking at that's a significantly longer route, but the ridership is such that that is one of our most successful routes in the Sun Shuttle system. A lot of people want to take that between Green Valley, Sahuarita, and Tucson. So those are the route characteristics, and there's far more population density in Sahuarita and Green Valley than there is in Picture Rocks, which is kind of where I find the discrepancy between the ridership to be the most obvious. We serve a lot of really heavily used locations in Green Valley and Sahuarita, such as the Walmart, the Fry's, the casino on the border on Tohono O'odham, the San Javier Reservation. So we're looking at a major trip generators on Route 421X, as opposed to we're mainly a neighborhood service specifically for Picture Rocks on Route 414P. And then Steve, could you remind me of your other question?
Well, yeah, my other question was trip purpose, demographics, what kind of impact you're going to have. For instance, if the Express is providing trips for people to get somewhere they go on a daily basis, like work or something, but Picture Rock is something people are using as a lifeline, like grocery shopping, medical appointments, you could drop down to 3 days a week, reduce your operating cost, and then force the ridership up, if it's something that people can schedule around. That's why I was curious about whether or not there have been any discussions with the riders or research to find out what the impacts were.
Yeah, and we did do a public outreach campaign a few months ago, I believe in April or May. I'll have to double check, but I believe so the outcome of that public outreach was that what we found was that the long range regional transportation plan accurately predicts the need for the community to be more of a lifeline service. So the public didn't want to go all the way to Tohono O'odham Transit Center, but they did want to connect at the La Cholla-McGee Ina Loop at Pima Community College Northwest. That was by far and away the most heavily used option in our polling. And the responses, we got about, I believe 40 responses. And we asked what was the major impediments for people using the service, and they found that it just didn't go where they needed it to go. That all of the destinations that we had identified as being viable within the budgetary range that we had constructed by removing the 410 and transferring that to a public dial ride were not accessible via an hourly service. So while we may see a need in the future, as the long range regional transportation plan puts out, that the Picture Rocks Lifeline service is a 10-year program and not something that's going to, as Picture Rocks grows, we'll see a more of a need arise in the future. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, kind of. It sounds like people want to do more local circulation as opposed to traveling, which seems to me to be, I mean, it's more logical to get in those communities, especially if you're talking about the elderly, that that's what they're taking, are those short trips to shop and do things like that.
Right.
And, it
But
takes 12 to 18 months for a service just to get its legs. So, I mean,
right.
this is your gig, not mine, but I'd be reluctant to completely axe something in less than 12 months.
Right. And the I see Jonathan Crow, but first, just really quickly, we did approve for 12 months the pilot program last October, I believe. Okay, go ahead, Jonathan. You're muted.
Thanks. Did you mention earlier, Rio, that you were finding 47 riders per day on this route?
That's the maximum. That's the most we've had in one day. The median is closer to 2021.
Okay. And then I guess a couple of questions. Will RTA be willing to provide a report and analysis on your recommendation based on everything you've talked about today?
Certainly, yeah. We have a memo that we've produced specifically around Route 414P that I'll be sending out to the Transit Working Group after this meeting.
Okay. And then kind of another question, opening up a bit of a can of worms here. So, I've been on the Transit Working Group for a long time, many years. And I recall, and I think several others in the committee, certainly Steve has been around for that same time that I have. But the Transit Working Group was tasked several years ago with establishing criteria and metrics in which to evaluate routes such as this for performance. And what I'm hearing just so far in today's presentation, Rio, is kind of a unilateral recommendation by RTA staff that doesn't seem to reflect the process and procedures and agreements that we have made historically with Transit Working Group on establishing and following the metrics that we've established. So I realize you're bringing this to us today, but it seems almost you're just sort of telling us what you've decided versus asking us for meaningful input. And I'm wondering if the metrics and the whole process that we spent quite a bit of time on years ago is still applicable, or if you've kind of changed the rules.
So while we were not directly consulting the metrics for this particular process, that is something that we can do in this case as well. It'll take a bit of digging, but in terms of whether or not this route is up to the standard that we've held other routes that we know we've eliminated before based on performance metrics. The route 410, for example, Silver Bell north of Ina, had approximately doubled the ridership of this route for a similar cost, and that route was recommended to be removed by the Transit Working Group.
Right.
So if this committee requests it, we'll go ahead and attach the standards for operating Sun Shuttle routes to the memo.
Yeah, I think that's going to be helpful. I mean, obviously, the Pima County Board of Supervisors is going to take interest in this section. And I think the last thing I'll just mention is that generally, I think I share some of the concerns that Steve raised about, number one, cutting service without sort of giving it a chance to get up on its feet, even though I understand the previous decision was to do a test run for 12 months. I'm also of the opinion that it might take a little longer to get the feet underneath this program, and it may be a little too soon to recommend cutting so quickly. And then I also am concerned about, some of the lifeline needs of the residents of this area who now have been provided with, some service. And then let's see. Yeah, no, those are my 2 points that I guess I'm a little concerned about cutting it so quickly and what impacts that's going to present to the folks there. And that, if access to Pima County, Pima College Northwest is great, but that's not, to me, I mean, I think access to grocery stores and basic services along the Silver Bell corridor is probably more important, I would think, to sort of meeting the needs of what we might consider lifeline services. So I'm just wondering if there's, other considerations versus cutting it all together, for adapting the service, like Steve said, to maybe less frequency or 1 day a week or something that can provide, some basic lifeline services to the folks in Picture Rocks without just eliminating service altogether. So
Okay.
I don't need an answer to those right now, Rio. Those are just my concerns, and I appreciate the information today. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Steve.
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan that maybe we need to be a little more thoughtful. I remember, not that many years ago when there were issues with something not performing, we'd have a similar discussion, but then staff would say, we're going to go out and try to boost the ridership. We're going to do some things to focus on improving performance. And I'd like to see us do that. And then the other thing was, and this is just an editorial comment, we just got a letter from the Pima County Board of Supervisors about the COA suggesting that there are many people that want to use the express routes, and they're concerned about our elimination. And my guess is that the express route ridership isn't much better, or maybe not even as good as Picture Rock. And so I think you might be walking into a left hook there that Jonathan might have just saved you a little grief. And then there are some creative ways. So if you've got people in neighborhoods that want to go grocery shopping, and that's a big deal, you could almost schedule a service where you say, I'm going to come in a day a week, reserve a trip. We're going to take people shopping 1 day a week for a couple hours. You can meet some of those lifeline needs, maybe more cost effectively. And it actually becomes a value added for them because you pick them up now when you work out schedules more. So there may be some creative stuff you can do to turn that into a more productive, more beneficial route.
Right. All right. Any other comments or questions? I see Lisa.
Just, I noticed, can you tell me, is it always been Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, since for the whole year, or did that change from 5 day to 3 day?
It's been Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for the entirety of the
Test.
Yeah, the pilot period.
All right, thank you.
Rio, just tagging onto what Steve said. Yeah, I have intimate knowledge of the letter he referenced from Pima County Board of Supervisors.
Right.
Very intimate knowledge, Steve. But I think he raised a good point that I hadn't thought about. I was looking at the COA data while we were having this meeting today, and looking at the daily boardings reported for all the shuttle services. And you're right, if the average is more closer to 20, like you said, Rio, that's pretty low relative to the other 400 shuttle services, with the exception of the 450 to Southeast Tucson and Rita Ranch, which has a reported daily average boarding of 29, which isn't much more, and yet that's not being proposed to cut per the COA. So FYI. However, right. I think Steve's point that, comparing to all the express routes, there's a number of express routes that have pretty low ridership that aren't being proposed for elimination. A number were, but the ridership on the express routes is really low, and the cost to provide that service is relatively high. So I think you got to be careful, comparing the performance of the Picture Rocks right now to some of the other existing transit services we're providing and we're paying for, and be careful not to hold to not to use the ridership number as a golden rule, given that we've got a lot of other lower performing routes, so to speak, that are being in service now. So I like Steve's comparison of making it across the board.
Right. Okay. I see Orlanthea and then Steve.
Just the town ran into this type of situation early in the process with our dial-a-ride service. It was fixed route for a while. And then there was a deviated service mixed with a fixed route, and now it's completely dial-ride. So I'm wondering if that's an approach you could take with this service. Maybe fixed with the option for pickups. I'm not really familiar with the service area, but I know, and I'm not sure if it's covered with existing dial-a-ride service from a different route, but that might be something to explore, rather than cutting completely.
Yeah.
I know with the town, we struggled the first few years in just getting the information out there, even though we did do email blast, we had magnets done, we shared the information whenever we could, but there are still some areas where we just couldn't reach. But as time went by, more people got to know about it. So I wonder if there's whatever jurisdiction is nearby, if that's something that they can assist with maybe printing it on a bill, like a utility bill, just saying, hey, FYI, this is available, maybe to reach a bigger population so that they're aware that service is available to them. Just a few thoughts.
Thanks, Rolanthea. I see Steve.
Well, and I was just kind of following up on that. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. What we're providing is a service that people rely on and grow to rely on. And so at the end of the day, you know, tomorrow, 6 months or a year from now, it may not be something you want to continue, but it's really important to reach out to the people and understand what the impact is. And that might give you some ways to become more productive. The numbers are important, but our service is a lot more than the numbers. I mean, the people really, really rely on what we're doing. So.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Uh-huh.
I see Lisa.
You said you're going to send out the letter
Yeah.
after the meeting. Would you be able to give statistics on who's boarding where and like what timeframes are being utilized the most and what, exactly where they're boarding, where they're getting off and getting back on it?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hearing that there's a lot of discussion to take place, what I'm going to ask for a motion to table until the next meeting. The discussion and vote specifically of this agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right. Thank you all for that discussion, and we'll be sure to provide the information that you all have requested in order to inform this decision making. Okay. Next, we're going to provide a presentation on the November Sun Shuttle booklet changes. These booklet changes are going to be coverage neutral, but hopefully cost neutral as well. If we're going to be able to save a couple of bucks here and there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to my Remix. Would someone allow for, oh, there we go. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my Remix here to go over the changes with y'all very quickly. I also need my, well, shoot. I thought I had my document up that described all the changes. I'll go through them as I remember them. I'll pull up the document at the end and cover anything I missed. Starting with Oro Valley and going clockwise. So Oro Valley changes, we're going to retime the route to allow for the deviation off of First Avenue to be pulled back to Oracle Road. We found that the deviation had originated at an earlier date and time before the developments on the east side of Oracle Road were completed. So we found that this will be a coverage neutral option, and it will allow for easier boarding and unboarding for the communities on the east side of Oracle while maintaining connectivity to the west side of Oracle, the shopping center. We're also adding stops at Oracle and La Reserve and Oracle and Hanley Boulevard, as well as transitioning our stop at Rooney Ranch to the stop at Oracle and First on the east and west side of the route. This should save the route about 2 minutes in a total. Are there any questions on the Oro Valley 401 piece?
Rio, I've got a question or a comment. It sounds like this is kind of a done deal if you're talking about November changes, but the thing that pops out to me is that I think you talked about deviating the route from off Oracle Road to only Oracle Road now. Is that correct?
Yeah, so to compare earlier, let me pull up the
if that's the case, then I'd be a little bit cautious about forcing pedestrians to walk across Oracle Road. There's just a tremendous focus on pedestrian fatalities these days. We're ranked 13th in the nation, as most of us know, for safety. And even though I understand the efficiency of keeping it on the main line, I would just be really cautious about forcing an additional crossing of pedestrians across Oracle Road just to catch the bus. But that's just an observation, and I'm not making a recommendations one way or the other. I'm just a cautious point, I guess.
So, okay. And while you were speaking, Jonathan, I took the liberty of pulling up the original route orientation for Route 401, where on the northbound run, it would deviate off of Oracle onto First Avenue to get to this stop at Rooney Ranch, and then pull back onto Oracle. Southbound, it would do the same thing. In our proposed scenario, we would keep the line straight going past Oracle. So your comment about crossing Oracle again is correct. However, I will note that we are currently, if anyone from the east side of Oracle wants to catch Route 401, they have to also cross Oracle at this juncture. I see John.
Yes, my other question would be, what were you at with switching it to a 30-minute headway instead of an hour?
Yeah, so we're at the that's part of the COA discussion, and so that is, we've finished public feedback on the COA, and now we're working with our consulting partners to create a final plan that we'll publish and give to y'all as being the first views on this, the first eyes on that project. I see Michael. You're okay.
Yeah, I had to unmute. So if you slide this map down, does it also continue to go down to the Tohono bus stop, or does it end at Oracle?
So it does continue to Tohono Chul Gardens, and it does also end at Oracle and Ina. It just depends on the time of day.
Oh, so the garden's not the bus stop down there across from the mall.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. I'll take any other questions or comments.
So it's still making the bus stop there at Ina and Oracle though, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Still, okay, yeah, so it's still catch the 16 or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, you'll still be able to catch the 16 from the stop at Ina and Oracle. Yeah.
Okay.
I see Jonathan.
Yeah, just to follow up, I'd be curious to see what the boardings are at the stops that we talked about up near the shopping center. And if there are, I would presume there'd be a lot more boardings and departs on the west side of the road within the shopping center area than there would be picking up people on the east side of Oracle Road from the residential neighborhoods. I might be wrong here, but I guess without knowing what the data is, I think that's kind of a blind decision to make without knowing where most people are coming from and going to. And if they are more boardings at the west side location internal to the shopping center, again, I'd be disinclined to remove that at this point.
Understood. Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Any other questions on questions or comments on Route 401 before I move on? Hearing none, I'm going to continue clockwise to Route 450. Not a big change this time around. We are adding additional stops going northbound and southbound on Houghton Road in Irvington here and here. These will be cost neutral, except for the cost to install the bus signs. Any questions on this change? Hearing none, we'll move on to Route 440, no changes. 421X, no changes. Route 430, we do have a change. We'll retime the route to accommodate this issue. So let me pull up the original route profile here in August. We received a notice from the Tucson Estates Homeowners Association that this street, Western Way Circle, is private property, and as such, Sun Shuttle is not permitted to run on their right of way. So we've actually already implemented a detour, and that will be solidified in November's booklet. This will save the route about 2.5 minutes of runtime. I'll take any questions and comments, starting with Orlanthia from the town of Saharita.
Just going back quick to the 421, I heard that there were no changes, so does that mean it's going to stay on I-19?
That's correct. For the time being, we're waiting for the COA to produce results or produce a final report for us.
Do you have a time frame of when you expect that information?
I believe it's going to be presented or finalized in November, and then early 2024. And Davida and Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Early 2024 adoption by council. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's the timeline, although,
Yeah.
Those are always kind of optimistic.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and that doesn't represent changes that go through the transit working group or the RTA board.
Okay.
Okay. I see Dick.
Yeah, this is Dick Roberts, Green Valley. The last meeting you mentioned that La Cañada coming off of Duval Mine Road, there are going to be flag stops. I haven't seen anything more on that. Is that still going to be in the booklet?
That is in the current booklet, yes. So that was implemented in August.
Okay, I hadn't seen that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? John, you have your hand up.
No, that was from previous, I think.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on Route 430, Tucson Estates, Drexel Heights, Valencia West? I see Steve.
So just a quick question. Evidently, you're telling me that Tucson Estates is, that's private property.
Yeah.
Has Tucson Estates asked you to remove the service from there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They've said, and Wendell can speak to this more.
Oh, I was just curious.
Oh,
My
okay.
other question was, how are the flag stops working? Normally those are deterrent to ridership.
We haven't seen any significant increase or decrease. We are speaking on the idea of installing more actual physical signs in the flag stop zones in areas where it's safe to pick up. This would be akin to something like the Tempe Orbit system, where they have a lot of flag zones, but they also have a lot of physical infrastructure to denote flag zones.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why the Route 430 is one of our best routes, is because even though majority is flag zone, there's also quite a few physical signs along the route to denote where to pick up and drop off. There could be more, but currently it's the flag zone area that has the most physical infrastructure. Okay. Any other questions on Route 430? Hearing none, we'll proceed to Route 413. Okay, so Route 413 has been struggling to perform on-time performance in under 90 minutes, which is our headway. So what we've proposed is removing the stop at Rejito. This would both northbound and southbound. This would allow for 90-minute headways. However, it would mean that Rejito would no longer have a fixed route service. However, we would add this area, all of Rejito, as part of our general public dial-a-ride service for Marana and Avra Valley. And the rest of the route would remain unchanged. This would save the route about 8 to 10 minutes runtime in total, which would allow us to get in that 90-minute headway range while still maintaining stops or breaks for our operators. I'll take any questions or comments. I see Steve and I see Lisa.
I got to quit raising my hand. I'm sorry. So how many people are affected by elimination of that stop?
So the town of Rejito, or the community of Rejito total has a population of 90 according to the 2020 census, and we've been seeing it's not a high very many riders on this stop. We've been seeing a steady increase, but it has not reached the levels that we had in for other stops.
So what percentage of the total ridership is coming out of there? I always get concerned about saying I'll I'll be on time if I just have to pick up fewer people.
Yeah.
That sounds like something an operator would say.
Yeah. And so if we go back to August changes, I just want to show you the route deviation that's required for the route to get off of the I-10 to serve Rejito. This is going southbound. They have to get off on Tangerine and then take a frontage road. And then we're told that this area in particular causes our drivers to slow down quite a bit. And then they have to get back on at Avra Valley Road. Same thing going northbound. The drivers have to deviate significantly. In addition, there's an at-grade crossing at Tangerine that causes traffic to back up quite a bit. As for your question to the percentage of riders who use the Rejito stop, in the last 30 days, Oh, this is Route 401. Give me a moment. I'll defer to Lisa and then I'll give you that statistic.
But it's kind of along, you're probably gonna have to ask or look it up too, but I was curious, when they're getting on, are they going up north or are they going south? Because if they're using the dial-a-ride, they'll be able to continue to go up north, but they won't be going south.
Yeah. And I'll remind folks that Rehito is part of the ADA paratransit area. So that's, you know, we're still serving that area, the paratransit needs of that area. And you're correct, Lisa. So in total, Rehito cover is about 6% of all boardings on the route. Our largest are Miranda Municipal Complex at 26% and Tucson Premium Outlets at 17%. Cindario and Greer 13, and then so it's pretty low down on the list of stops that we serve, and well, you're correct, Lisa, that they would only be able to get into Miranda to then catch the 413 going all the way to town. If they aren't using if they're using the general public and not the ADA paratransit. All right, I see Jonathan.
Yeah, I hadn't really paid attention to this area ever, frankly. And I thought when you first mentioned Rehito, you were talking about the community much further north over on the Pinal side. Yeah, I guess I'd be concerned. I mean, I'm a little concerned about cutting even 6%. I mean, you know, these folks are pretty isolated as I'm now quickly learning from looking at them on the map. And I'm wondering what extent, you know, this is providing lifeline services to them. And I also don't know the area well enough to know what kind of a socioeconomic group this is. And I'm guessing that there may be disadvantaged and lower income folks who may be using this service. So another caution towards just cutting service for the sake of time. So I understand the constraints, and they're tough trying to make these all work, but you know, I'd feel a lot better about, or I wouldn't feel quite as bad if I knew that, you know, these folks didn't really need this service, and you're providing kind of a critical lifeline. So just another caution and comment there.
Right. And just for context, that's 5 boardings in the last 30 days on in Rehito. So yeah, it's you know, to put a number to the
yeah, not too many.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So any other questions or comments about Route 413? Excuse me, I meant to say 20 in the last 30 days, not 5.
Was that the only change on the 413?
Yes, the time will be adjusted so that they gain the 8 minutes back those 8 minutes will be used to retime the route and make sure that the drivers have an appropriate rest time. Currently, the operators have been rushing, so to make this work. All right. Hearing none, let's wrap out with 412. So no routing changes. We're just adding 2 additional stops at Thornydale and Costco Drive here. This is a passenger requested stop, and similar with Thornydale and Hardy here. So anywhere along Thornydale that there's a pedestrian crossing, we've accommodated using a new additional stop. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, that about does it for the changes portion of the November booklet. I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, which I believe is adjournment. Yep. All right. I will make sure that that information gets distributed as requested by the Transit Working Group. And we'll return to the subject of the 414P at our next meeting. Thanks so much, gang.
Thanks, Rio.
Thank you.